Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. I've been the #1 salesperson in a male-dominated industry, a successful entrepreneur for over 30 years, and now my mission is to help you build a business and brand nobody else can compete with. If you're ready to break out of the pack and create your own uncopyable advantage, stay tuned. My guests and I are here to help.
Be an advocate and think about persuasion. People don't think about that. And I think they think of persuasion as like a dirty word. It's not. Or entrepreneurs. We need to sell ourselves. We need to be influential, and there's no other way to do that unless we're persuading and advocating and standing for something. We're not just informing. People are going past that. People aren't going to listen to you unless you take a stance, and they might disagree with you, but so what? I disagree with a lot of people, and disagreement's okay.
I love that. I'm just going to dive in because you can tell how passionate my guest today is about communication and persuasion. And Shelby Jo Long is a keynote speaker, author, and business strategist who helps leaders and entrepreneurs turn communication into a competitive edge. She spent 18 years as a communication professor and international debate coach, and she now helps professionals harness their unique communication skills and expand their influence through her core leadership framework. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm excited. And by the way, do you go by Shelby Jo?
Shelby's fine.
Shelby's fine. Okay. You're easy to please there. Yep. Well, I just had to start the show with what you were talking about because I asked you specifically about debate. Because I think, as I mentioned, my muse for this podcast is mostly women. And sometimes we're a little more, reluctant to really get out there and fight for what we believe in or to really forcefully persuade someone. And as you said, persuasion isn't a dirty word. If you've got something of value that you could share with people, tell us more about why is this so important, this distinction?
Yes. And thank you for all of those things. I talk about my experience in debate, but I've been in the world of debate and communication and persuasion for a very long time. I was a high school and college competitor in debate. I traveled around the country to compete. I also coached it for a lot of years. So I traveled around the country and the world talking about persuasion and talking about debates and how important building an advocacy is and standing for something. And in a world of such polarization that we're in right now, and particularly the violence that is erupting around it, we might be a little bit nervous. And I think even before that happened, we were nervous. The general was nervous to take a stand and advocate for something and persuade our audience, because that was something that, particularly, I'm a former professor, where we informed and people had to remember things and then write them on an exam. And we didn't want to persuade and be a part of that. But even in that space, you have to persuade them to listen to you and persuade them that you're credible in that space. And I think particularly with entrepreneurs and speakers, that's something that we need to think about too. You're not credible just because you're standing in front of an audience. Right? You're credible. You build your credibility with your ethos, and you build your credibility by what you speak about and by taking a stand for something. And maybe I'm just conditioned that it's okay to have a different opinion than your superior or your colleague or your teammate. It's okay to take a stand for something because it's the conversation and of those opposite viewpoints that really creates that truth and creates that mutual understanding so we can create solutions together. So maybe it's my experience, but I do think and it's with women more so than men tend to not want to have that directive communication. But even males in decision-making structures on boards in the C-suite, that innovation is really stifled because people are scared to speak up and they're scared to contribute their opinion. And I think that's what I'm trying to change in people, whether they're leaders or team members or they're members of an organization, that it's okay. Let's have the conversation. Let's discover the solution together. So that's a very long-winded answer to a very short question.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I just wish you were a little bit more passionate about it. And that makes a good point too, because enthusiasm is contagious and passion is contagious. If you were to tell me all of what you just said and just talk about it in a monotone and tell me that's what you feel, that wouldn't have nearly the impact as how you just delivered that. And the first part that's on this recording, you listening can probably figure out, wasn't really even supposed to be on the recording. That's how Shelby feels. That's the real her. That's how she sees this scenario of, yes, being afraid to disagree, put your opinion out there. Maybe as women, that's even harder. I did take some debate in high school. I don't think I was really great at it, but I've been a great salesperson. But one thing I loved is that when you would have to argue one side and then you'd have to flip to the other side.
That's at every tournament. Frequently you had to argue for a side that you didn't believe. And I think that's such an amazing educational opportunity for someone to go through. Is imagine if our leaders were doing that. We'd have, instead of throwing, one-line phrases at each other, we had these conversations. What kind of solutions could we create together? And I think that's so important I've worked with multiple types of companies, tech companies to nonprofits to banks. And though all of those types of organizations, there's some hesitancy to take a stand and to do that. But when we have that conversation, that's where we create that truth. That collaboration is how we make decisions. And I think there's bigger things that you've got to have an open culture to be able to invite those things. But it's something that I think is a lost art in our communication. And I think fundamentally people are frightened of that. People are frightened I taught college for 18 years, and the biggest fear that they have is the actual communication. And that might be standing up in front of an audience talking, but it's really the face-to-face communication. And I think particularly since the advent of everybody's talking on their phones, people are not having conversations face-to-face anymore. And we're not talking on the phone. We don't think about our tone and our inflection and our nonverbal behavior and all of those things that can be distracting and can take away from your ability to really make an impact. So that's what I want to inspire business owners to think about, whether you're a solo business owner doing a sales pitch, and you've been in sales for a lot of years, so you know how to answer objections and all of those things, or whether you're in a boardroom with your C-suite making a decision, or whether you're talking to your customer service team, that we need that human connection. So that's what I want to inspire people to think about.
Well, you're inspiring me already. And I'm reminded of a meme. And there's some type of picture of these kids sitting around on their phone, and then they're just staring into the screen, slumped over. And then they show what they're typing and all these emojis and this and that. But it's really passive because it's through the phone. And of course, we all know about sending texts and emails and how things can be misconstrued. And you don't have a chance to clarify things as you go if you just send your message out and then wait for the answer. And yes, it can be scary if we get into the big, important, political, global, all these types of things. But when we bring it down to our sales and our business, what a great exercise. I hadn't thought of this for a while, but it's such a great exercise to sell your competitor's product. How would you sell your competitor's product against yours? That is, how powerful is that? Have you done that with your clients at all?
I have not, but that's a great idea. I have my clients debate. Because they're and have those conversations. I sit with leadership teams and I have them go through these conversations, present the other side of the argument, listen to, a big thing about communication too is that it's communicating and being empathetic and being charismatic in your communication, but there's a lot of listening too. So and that's a key part that we don't often think about. I'll give you an example in debate, and whether or not you're debate trained or not, that's one thing or sitting in a board meeting, listening to the person that's speaking ahead of you. We used to have to listen to that, and we used to have to flow down all their arguments and then write our arguments and then get up and speak afterwards. Like, listening and being able to articulate what the other person is saying so you can either respond to it or break apart their arguments. That's a skill that I don't see very often, and something that really should be nurtured, because in a boardroom making big decisions about budgets and where money is going, we should be having these conversations. There should be differing opinions. There shouldn't just be one person that's making those decisions. That's called groupthink, right? When everybody's thinking the same thing and acting on a charismatic leader and not questioning decisions, that can be a pretty dangerous situation. So that's what my mission is, to inspire people to think differently about conflict and disagreement and to have those difficult conversations.
I think this is all great information, reminders. Maybe we've heard some of this. I think the fact that we all need repetition to learn is very good for people like you, Shelby, and me, who help clients to deal with these issues. But you're right. I think as salespeople, as leaders too, I'm sure we want to talk, but we don't even know what to talk about until we find out really what the questions are, or what the important things are. So, I think that we get really wrapped up. Some of it is, it could be all kinds of things. We have a sales number on our head, or, we need to bring in business to grow and support the families that work for our business, whatever. But we also just we get wrapped up in how much we love what we think and what we are selling, or whatever, what we represent. So I know I'm probably going to be putting you on the spot, but luckily I can tell you can totally handle it. Are there think of the listener, are there any phrases, any catchphrases or little things that you can say that would help us remember when we're in the midst of talking with someone who doesn't agree, or we are wanting to persuade something, to let them know we understand, we're having empathy along that line?
When you're in some sort of disagreement, is that what we're talking about?
Well, I'm rambling all over the place. Yeah. Probably in a sales situation. Let's say a sales situation, we'll just pick that as something that I deal with a lot. The salespeople who really, we're better, and I'll include myself, we're better at talking than listening.
Yes, that's true. And many people are much more comfortable talking than listening, especially if they practice their sales pitch. They probably have it scripted. They know what to say next. And that feels comfortable for people because they like to have that in front of them. I've never been that kind of speaker, but probably 95% of people are that way. And it's the importance when you're in that sales conversation. Yes, you're asking for a transaction, but it's also that you're asking and you're persuading that you are the option that they want to make. And it's not about the product. It's about you. They're not buying your product because it's amazing, and maybe that they are, but there's probably 100 other products out there that are similar to yours. I'm in the speaking and business consulting world. There's a million business consultants out there. You can choose whatever you want. There are also many great business consultants. There are also some not very good business consultants. But how do I know that in the sales process? I have to assume that my audience and the person that I am speaking to hasn't done all that research. So I've got to be able to articulate that and adapt and shift and move a way that feeds the needs of my audience. How can my product, it's asking them the questions about, what's your biggest problem right now? What can I help? What's your biggest concern right now? Is it money? Is it, being able to shift and move the conversation to be what they need rather than what you want to say? And I think as an entrepreneur, that's hard because especially, you developed your program, you developed your You had yourself to sell. And yes, if I don't tell them all the information, they're not going to buy it, which is not as true as when you have the conversation and you're invested emotionally with them. People spend money much more on emotion than they do on logic. I'm guilty, right? Go to the store and I'm who hasn't done a little retail therapy in their life, right? We
Right.
tend to spend much more money on emotion than we do logic. And that's the personal connection that people are afraid of. So I think there's a gift of being agile and being able to adapt in those sales conversations. I think that's something that's really something to do. And I mean, that's as easy as asking those questions. Instead of going with the sales pitch to them, your first question to them should be about what you're doing or what problem you're solving. And I think that's a key part. And you're the expert in sales, so you could probably add into this conversation. But if my product can solve a problem that you have, if I can speak directly to how it can solve the exact problem that you have, that's going to make sure you get the sale, or it's going to increase your probability a lot more. So ask questions first, sell second would be my thing. And I think that's a really great thing to do in a boardroom or in a conversation with somebody. That say your side, let me ask you another question, and then I can talk about what my side is. So,
Hey there. I've got something for you that can change the way people see you and your business. It's my free guide, 25 Uncopyable Action Steps. These are real, practical steps you can use starting today to separate yourself from your competition. If you want your own uncopyable advantage, grab the guide at beuncopyable.com/action-steps. Now, back to the show. When you say I'm a sales expert and I know about asking these questions, one of my favorite thing that's happened more than once, I don't know how many times, is when people say, "What are you selling?" And I say, "I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm selling you, or even if I'm selling you, until I find out about you." It's the old sell this pen. Do you even need a pen? What would you use a pen for? Do you have a pen now? So there's that old exercise, but it's not about the pen. Of course, our whole entire uncopyable framework is about the fact that you are the secret sauce. Because yes, there are other consultants. There are other products and services that are, maybe they're better, maybe they're worse, maybe they're good enough. And that's what I've found when I'm in sales situations, that when I bring myself to the table and they know they can trust me, that I'm their advocate, that I will fight for them, I'll be there, I'm reliable, then my product can be good enough and they'll still stick with it. In my book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, I talk about a gentleman who he was working for a distributor and he moved to work with a different distributor, and he had a non-compete clause, which is pretty common. And once that ran out, all his clients went with him, even though it was a higher price. And he said, "Well, what's a lower price going to do for you if you can't get the product? Or there's a problem and your sales rep won't respond." There are so many things. If you're B2B like I am, it's really, a lot of it is about helping your clients succeed. So it's all, like you said, not about just talking. Who do you sell to? What's important to them? How do you serve them? What other opportunities? So it really is. It's so much about asking. And I'm a talker. People say, "Oh, I have the gift of gab." That's a problem, because it takes a discipline. It really takes discipline to not just dump stuff on them. And if you tell people too much, and if you tell them things that they don't care about, they'll just totally tune you out. So I love really what you're saying. And I would like your take on another question. Maybe we'll talk about the manipulation thing, which isn't really a bad thing. When we get our kids to eat healthy food, we both talked about our kids, we're probably manipulating them, right? Into wanting to eat vegetables. So it's not a game. Maybe it is a mind game. But how would you say you persuade people? Because you can't get someone else to change their mind. You have to help them change their mind, right? How do you approach that?
When I work with clients, and particularly in communication, and I work with leaders, I speak about connecting with them on an emotional level and also about speaking about a transformation. That there's something that and this has everything to do with your brand. And your brand is who you are, who you serve, and what transformation you offer. And in a very, very quick phrase, that's what that is. But who you are is your personality and your authenticity and your story and your ethos. Like, why should I trust you? And it has more to do with just the letters behind your name. It has everything to do with how I build this relationship. Has a lot to do with emotion. But then I think the second piece of that, and also discovering who your audience is and what the needs are. But I think one real key is that a lot of people miss is the transformation. What can I offer you? And what do I have that can help you solve a problem and get past this barrier? And yes, we can get past that, but what does that look like? And I think that visualization is something that's really key when it comes to the sales process, or even persuading, or even, we're talking a lot about sales, but I think even like sitting in a board meeting with my business partners, and I have something I want to say about a new line or a new product or a new way that we're going to go about things, I do my research and I develop my advocacy first so I can have some evidence behind what I'm saying, so I can have this credible discussion and say, I don't know if that's the right place to spend our money. What about doing this? So it's becoming much more of an advocate, but it has to do with how you build your position, and it has to do with your ethos, and it has to do with the results and what happens on the other side of that. I find that many entrepreneurs and many business owners talk a lot about what they do and not a lot about the other side of what happens if you do this thing. So it's really an interesting space. And the speaker space too, I work with a lot of speakers to be able to position themselves as consultants and to get long-term contracts. And great. Give me a story about what it does. Help the audience visualize what you're talking about. Don't just tell me the process. Tell me a story about what that created. I think there's that storytelling, there's that whole story selling that was such a big hit of a book quite a few years ago.
Yeah, Story Brand, Donald Miller.
Story Brand by Donald Miller, yeah. But I think we forget to do that in our process. When we get so stuck in, oh my gosh, my process is the way that we do it. But then we forget to talk about, let me tell you a real life story about it. So I think
I totally agree with that. And Donald Miller, no relation, but that is,
yeah.
And anytime anybody listening, if you've heard a speech, or maybe you've been to a lecture, like when you were a professor, what do you remember? If there's a story, especially if it has emotion behind it, that's what we do remember. So yeah, I have my signature story of being muffler mama from all those years ago when I was selling automotive products. But the fact that I went into a muffler shop and installed mufflers with the guys, that wasn't just a story. It represented my commitment to my customers. And then it talked about how I could help them get better results. And as you said, the specific stories about what happened. And of course, social proof. I don't know if this is considered social proof when you tell the stories of your other customers, but that is huge.
Because that's where the visualization comes in. It's just, and I think back to my debate days. Some debate goes so fast with all these facts and statistics, and that's when people are just like, ugh, too much. But tell me a story about how those all mean something. Fact is not going to win you a debate or win an argument, but the story of it might. That's really because it's the emotional connection that really makes a difference. So I think that's the thing about it too. We think about debate as we're butting heads, and yeah, maybe we are, but we got to work that all engages together. And if both sides are open to having a discussion and creating solutions together, great, everybody wins. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to work with people in that process.
And I think I love the way that you said fun, or that you said fun at all, because I think we sometimes do forget or get so in the weeds about all the things that we have to do and think, it's fun to help someone. I talk about this. I've probably, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard it before, but I still have a letter from one of my first outside sales jobs that my buyer sent to my boss saying, Kay is an asset to our company. We don't know what we'd do without her. So how great is that? I still remember that. And it's been, I'm not even going to tell you how many years ago. When you get someone that you could really help and they say, wow, I did this marketing campaign and I wanted to follow up and call people and they were calling me, or, that's something that's happened too. So, hey, it's fun. Let's have fun here too. It can be both. It should be both.
Absolutely. Right? And I think we forget that as entrepreneurs too, because as entrepreneurs, especially a lot of us are solo entrepreneurs. I have a ton of business partnerships because I'm good at the communication thing. I'm not so good at some of the other things like the marketing thing, like I have other people for that because I have partnerships because that's such an important part of things. But I mean, it's focusing on what your genius is and what you uniquely have to offer to the world. And when you can do that and limit the amount of time you have to do with bookkeeping and marketing and keeping track of numbers, even though that's a really important part of business. But when you stay in your genius zone, that's when you're going to have the most fun. And we do get stuck in business. And yes, we do need to make money. And that's an important part of it. But what if you're doing what you really enjoy doing and making money doing that and delegating the other stuff away? That's the kind of freedom we want as entrepreneurs. And not all the process is fun, but it's sure fun to be able to create our own solutions and move forward with that. I mean, I spent a lot of years as a college professor and I love teaching because I love creating and I love conversations and I love the interaction and speaking in a classroom. There was some things I didn't like about being in that structure though. Had nothing to do with the other faculty, just that I was limited. And when I stepped outside of that and started going into businesses and corporations and really making a difference with them, that's where the magic happens. When you're living in your genius and you're really making a difference, that's when it's fun. And I think we have to step back from I got to send out my marketing and I got to plan everything today. We get stuck in that and we forget that it's about relationships. It's about having conversations. Have fun with it. That's what people are going to be attracted to.
That's right. I think of the phrase, only do what only you can do. And yes, I have an assistant and I delegate, and sometimes it's hard to do because she might not do it the way I do it. But then again, maybe the way I'm doing it isn't right when it comes to bookkeeping or emailing or outreach or whatever that might be. So yeah.
And then that's vulnerability as a leader. And that's a part of communication, is being vulnerable and saying, maybe I'm not doing it the way that it could be done. So that's, I think, another reason that people will get kind of nervous about persuading and taking a stance about something is because you might be wrong. And
not in my case, but yeah, sometimes. It happens a lot to my husband. He's wrong a lot.
Yeah. So
you're right. It is. And when people are with strong personalities, people that are go-getters, leaders, it is hard sometimes to admit that you're wrong, but all the biggest successes, I've heard so many leaders who've accomplished so much and they say, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And, those are all different rooms. They are in charge of the big room, but all those rooms, they don't want to be the smartest one because they want to focus on what they're passionate about, which I think this conversation is so fun. I have interviewed an age range of women from Gen Z, even younger than millennial. I have some superstar young women. And I've also interviewed women in their 80s and that are still so passionate about what they're doing and successful and vibrant. And, we talked before we came on, I'm of the age where I could retire. I just can't even believe that because I don't feel like that at all. But if you're doing what you love, why wouldn't you want to keep doing it? And if you have the freedom to not do it all the time too, that's very nice too. But yeah, it's the old do what you love and the money will follow, which I think is a little bit of a Pollyanna attitude.
Yeah.
But there is some truth to that, you really be most successful when you enjoy what you're doing. You're making a difference, not just selling stuff, making a difference. I think we all want to make a difference.
That's where the lasting impact is.
That's where the lasting impact.
I mean, you need the money to live. You need the money to support your family. And the money's not always going to follow. You got to work to get it. But
yeah,
if you work to a point where you can let go of some of those things that really don't make you all that happy, and you can focus on what you do, then that's a pretty good place to be. That's not work.
Right. And, I think of the term hustle culture and how that gets such a negative rap, whatever. And I think the hustle is what you do to earn the right to have that conversation. I mean, I remember years ago when I was selling mufflers, I literally followed the competitor's delivery truck around so that I could find out who they were selling to, because I knew I could sell them my product. I knew I could do a better job because I had me. And so there was some hustle. But then when you get into the situation where you have that right to persuade someone, then that's the reward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's such an important thing. I mean, you gotta give yourself the time. You also gotta, it's a personal investment too. I mean, I think one thing that stood out for me from that comment is the confidence. You have the confidence to do that. And sometimes, particularly as females, we just need to be not given the permission, but we feel like we need to be given the permission to be able to do that. And I think of my business partner in the strategic advisor board, he owns 19 companies, and he very direct in communication but also understands that you do the work. And if you stand up for yourself, that's what you need to do. And so what if somebody disagrees with you? So it's not that you need to be given that, but I think as women, we kind of feel I haven't been given that permission. So maybe it's kind of challenging to say. And maybe it's age, maybe it's experience, maybe it's I don't really care what people think anymore. I don't know if that's an age or an experience, or it's I'm not going to please everybody, and that's okay.
That is okay, right? And I have multiple examples of women who've been on this podcast who have to claim their right at the table. Megan Tennell comes to mind. She's the CEO of the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, huge association, huge trade show. She started as an intern. She's now CEO. Along the way, one conversation, I remember she said that someone called, and when she'd answer the phone, they'd assume that she's the secretary. And one gentleman said, "Hey, how are you doing, Cupcake?" And she said, "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you?" She said it right back to them. And that gentleman took pause and he said, "You're right. For whatever reason, we have to claim our seat at the table. We have to just acknowledge we have the right to be there just as much as the men." So I really think that's a great train of thought. I want to close with one more example because it just happened. And it's a different situation, but it's a friend of mine whose husband, she's older, and he should not be driving, in my opinion, in my strong opinion. They have a car, a very safe car that she hasn't wanted to drive because it's so expensive and, important and whatever. And she's afraid, I might hurt the car. And I thought of a phrase came to mind, and it was perfect. I said, "You know what? You got to put your big girl panties on right now. You just got to do it." And I am so proud of her. She is driving all the time now. She's driving her husband because she put her big girl panties on. Sometimes, yeah, it's not like a magic formula. You just got to do it.
You just got to do it. Yep.
And unfortunately, Nike stole that phrase, but this has been a fantastic conversation. How can listeners learn more about you, connect with you, do business with you, hire you, send flowers to you? I don't know.
I would appreciate you hear all of those things. So, connect with me on LinkedIn, Shelby Jo Long. That's probably the best. I'm there all the time. Facebook too. I also have a YouTube channel that is I'm transitioning things over, and so it's slowly developing. But I talk all about my core framework and introducing constructive disagreement into work cultures and how to get past those things. I also have a genius entrepreneur program about how to transform your genius into a product and enter it into the marketplace. So
so many choices.
I'll put
all of that in the show notes. And I've just, again, thank you so much, Shelby. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me. As you can tell, I love talking. So I enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, and review the show. Always remember, be uncopyable.